back again. Albot once again comes back to, do some hopefully fun stuff. But today I want to talk about a program called Enum4Linux. It's basically enumeration for Linux, and it is specifically going to enumerate SMB network file shares, or Samba shares. In a way, they're kind of the same thing. They're both related, and basically what it is, Samba is a suite of tools that you can use to connect window machine file shares with Linux machines. So then you can use different OSs to connect to different different OSs to connect to different OSs, and then be able to file share in between them. So yeah, let's get started real quick. So let's start this off. And I'm going to be using this Kenobi TryHackMe box for this video. I've already done this like before. I'll go through it today, but this one was specifically like in line with what I wanted to talk about today. So go ahead and start the box, and then once it's started, go ahead and connect with your OpenVPN. And once you're connected to the network, the TryHackMe network, we are going to perform an nmap scan. So I use this nmap command here, nmap-a capital P lowercase n, and then the IP address. When I tried doing it without the dash capital P and n, it was telling me that there were some errors with the ping, like pings were not being received. So basically what the dash P and N do is it'll skip the host discovery portion of your scan, and then it'll just assume that your host is all alive, and then that way it'll just bypass that step of nmap. And to save everybody time, I've done the scan myself. You go ahead and pause the video here, and you can run the command, and then you should end up with the same result afterwards if you want to click play again once you're done. But for the video's purposes, I've already done the scan for everybody, and after about 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, I received this report here. Let me make that bigger. So we received a report with a few ports open here, with the state open, and the service name, and the version numbers. Okay. So we got an FTP server, SSH server, some public key information. We have an HTTP server here, some service information. And then it's giving us some more information on the header and what are the potential things that you can find in there. This port 111 RPC bind. This is basically it's a server for remote procedure calls to basically start and initiate connections to programs or services on another system, kind of like an API. So you can remotely send commands and execute services, and for this one specifically, it looks like we have RPC bind, which is the server, and then NFS, network file share. More NFS down here. So my guess is that the service being ran on the other side, or the program being ran, has to do with network file server. And then we have two more open here, port 139 and 445, both under NetBIOS Samba. So like I said, this is a suite of programs that allow you to connect to Windows file shares. And then we got two other ports down here, but they're not open, so they're being filtered by a firewall most likely. Then some more information down here. Host name, Kenobi, potential OS, and a lot of SMB information here. All this information was given to me with the -A for aggressive scan. Okay, let's see what we can find in here. It says NetBIOS name, Kenobi, NetBIOS user, unknown. Okay, gives us some names. So Kenobi is potentially a user, as we can see here. It's trying to tell us, okay, here's more information on the operating system, computer name, fully qualified domain name, Kenobi again, account used, guest, okay, some good stuff, some good information. So now, here comes the fun part. So you can either follow through with the TryHackMe instructions, which will lead you to an nmap script that you can use that enumerates SMB shares, which are basically like your network file shares on Windows, or your SMB users, and that they do that through something called RID cycling, which is null session connections, which basically are connections to a remote service with no user or password. So yeah, it sounds, why would anybody have that up, right? But you would be surprised. So to do this, we're going to use a tool called Enum4Linux, and it's actually a script that you can, if you don't have Kali Linux, you can download it, but it comes with Kali Linux already, and it's a Perl script, so you'll either have to have Perl installed to load it. And here's the website, so you get it actually from a Cisco partner, it looks like now. And here's a help screen, you know, it gives you a whole bunch of options that you can use. But I'm not gonna go through these options because I'm gonna make the script go through everything all at once. I don't want to go and specify different things. Okay. So here it's telling you how to use it. To actually download it, you can also go to the GitHub page, Cisco CX Security Enum4Linux. Here it is. So you would download the script, then run it. And that's about it for running it if you don't have Kali Linux. And to run it, To run it, you're going to run the command enum4linux and then just the IP address that you have for the TryHackMe box. So here, this is the IP address. And that's it. Let it run. It took me like about, I want to say like about 7 minutes to run that. So, you know, I don't want that a part of the video. So again, I ran that for you. You can press pause here and do it yourself, or, you know, just follow through and then do it later. So basically what this did was it went through and it tried to enumerate shares for me to try to see if there's anything already up and running. And we will see here, share enumeration, that there are shares here. We got print with the $, anonymous, and IPC with the $. But what we want to do is map the shares. So to map them, we want to be able to connect to them. So down here, you can see that the mapping portion of it was denied for the first one, okayed for the second, and then it was like they couldn't understand, the script couldn't understand the last one. So we have a network share of this, anonymous, and it's okayed. Now either one thing can happen, like when I go try to connect to it, I will either be asked for a username or a password, or I can be asked nothing. And already from what we've seen, Kenobi was probably one of the usernames. And if we keep scrolling down, we get some information about the passwords the password information for the domain. So these are password policies. All this information was gathered. Okay. Minimum password length 5. No password history needed. So if people are going to reuse their passwords, and you know their password. So this is all very useful information for brute forcing passwords. Let's keep scrolling down here. And here it's going to do the RID cycling that I was talking about. Here it found SIDs, security identifiers. And with these, it's basically identifying a user or a work group in the Windows system. So now it's going to go through all of these and try to connect with, null connections here, null sessions. So it's going to go through every identifier and see if you can log in null with a null connection. So we're doing the first one. We see that we find these built-in user groups, which are usually on every system. And then it goes to the second one, and it found this domain with Kenobi and potentially the username called nobody as a local user. I'm saying potentially because, I mean, it's a program. It can fault, right? You can't always trust things. And then here's a domain group, Kenobi, and none. And that's about, oh, here's another one. User Kenobi. So we for sure can say that Kenobi is being used as the user. So we have a username. We don't have a password. But that's fine, right? That's definitely fine. With the brute forcing information we got and a username, I'm sure we could get a password. But what I want to do now that you've seen in Enum4Linux, it's simply that easy. It does all this for you. If their configurations are wrong on the system, you're going to get a lot of information back. And it's all done with one command. You can use that nmap scan script that you can do as well. Yeah, so the next thing you want to do is go back to the file shares here. And in order to connect to these file shares, you need a program called SMB, Service Message Block Client, SMB Client. And I have SmbClient. So I'm going to just type it in. It comes with Linux again. If you don't have it, if you don't have Linux or Kali Linux, you'll just have to install it. I believe you can also, oh, you wouldn't read it. I don't think you would need it for Windows. But SmbClient, and then to connect to it, you would simply do / the IP address of the system, 63.79, and then you want to type in anonymous. So that's because that's the share we're going to want to get to, right? Anonymous. So now it's asking for my password. And now I'm connected. And to see what's inside, you do simple Linux commands. And here I found this log.txt. I want to see if there's anything more in here. That's not a useful command. So I want to see what this log.txt file is. I'm going to get log.txt. And then I'm just going to exit. Now let's see what is inside of that file. So let's open that up. So we connected to the share, and the share had this file called log.txt. All I did was retrieve it, and now I'm going to look at it. And here it's giving us some information about a private key under the Kenobi user that can definitely be used to SSH into it or something. And then it's also telling us about ProFTP, the configuration for it. Okay, it's telling us the port number it's under. It's telling us the user for the service. Okay, I'm just looking through these more and more. What else can we get from this? There's a lot of information here. Okay, let me go back up a little bit. I'm reading this here. A basic anonymous configuration, no upload directories. If you do not want anonymous users, simply delete this entire anonymous section. So this anonymous section will actually let us connect to the FTP server as an anonymous user or FTP user without a password. And if it's configured that way, there's probably something in there. So what I want to do now is I'm gonna clear the screen, and I want to connect to the FTP server. To do this, you can do netcat. You can use an nc command. nc the IP 10.10. What was that? 63.79. Port 21. Okay, it's doing something. I think here you would type in FTP or anonymous or user login. Okay, something's up with this. What do I? Invalid command. Try being more creative. Okay then. Interesting. I'm gonna type in the FTP command instead. You can also use this to try to log in. Here it's gonna ask us for the name. I am gonna type in anonymous or FTP. And I'm just gonna press enter for the password. FTP bind address used already in use. Okay. Interesting. So I don't think this is the correct way to do it. So let's exit out. Let's go back to our nmap scan. This other thing called the RPC bind, right? The server is it can hold a the network file shares. So from there we can try to see if there's anything mounted as well. So not only were those shares useful, but there's also not only were the SmbClient shares useful, but there can also be some other share or something else mounted, right? Something that we can't see with SMB. And I'm gonna try to find that. There's another command you can, or another script you can use called, what was it called? I forget what it's called, but it's actually under here, under gain initial access with ProFTP. So you can also follow this. Everything that I'm doing has been because of here. I've actually learned how to do it through here. Okay. Okay, here it is. nfs-ls, nfs-show mount is what we want. Those are the scripts that we want. Network file share -ls and network file share -show mount, and then the IP address. We'll let that run. And if there are any other failed, oh, I didn't do it correctly. NFS show mount, right? Show mount. Didn't like the space. So let's see how long this takes. Okay. Here it's telling us on port 111 there's a mount under the var the var folder, the directory. So this would mean that we can actually mount the var directory from the host machine onto our machine. And then we can access the share on our system and use it as if it were ours. That's what we want to do. There's an initial step with the FTP where we have to exploit the FTP service. So I'm gonna follow through here. Let's see, what was it? Okay, so there's this command here. The mod copy module implements site CPFR and site CPTO, which can be used to copy file directories from one place to another on the server. Any unauthenticated client can leverage these commands to copy files from any part of the file system to a chosen destination. So now it would trigger, you're like, okay, I can move any file to any destination in the system using these commands. And earlier we had seen that there was an SSH private key under Kenobi user. And now we've seen that there's a mount under the -var. So we're kind of picking up pieces here. Let's try to actually move that private key to the var and then mount the var. So here, site CPFR, and it wants us to give them the directory Kenobi.ssh id rsa. Now it's telling me the directory exists, it's ready for a destination name, and I simply want to put it under var. Here on TryHackMe, they're using var temp id rsa, and at that point I don't really think it would matter, so I'm going to just do it under var. Oh, permission denied. Well, let's do what they did. Put it under a temp. Whoops. I think I messed that up. Let me do that again. It's also an issue with these older systems. You know, you can't really go back. You have to restart the whole thing. Okay, it looks like it did it. So now let's proceed. Now what we want to do, let's see where we are. What we want to do now is make a directory under temporary, I don't know, we'll call it get_rect. And then we're going to want to use the mount command, the IP address of the victim machine, and then we are going to want to use, I believe it's colon. Yeah, colon, and then the network file shared directory, so -var, and then we are going to want to say where we want to mount it under get_rect. Apply too few options. Is it just get_rect? I mean, like this. Okay. Interesting. Okay, let me go back and see what it's actually look. Okay, here's the command. Mount var. Interesting. It wants me to put it under mount. Let's see if it works without the mount. That's it right that, right? Isn't that literally just what I just did and it didn't do it earlier? Oh, I didn't have sudo on the same kind of command. Okay. Well, it mounted it. So now, let's go to that cd temp get_rect. And now we can see what is inside of the var directory on the other machine. Perfect. What we want now is to go under temp, see what's in there, and then we can see the file that we had moved earlier. Now what we want to do is just copy that file to... we don't really want to copy it. Let's just use it to actually try to get into the machine. And we know that the user is Kenobi, and we know how to connect to a SSH to a machine. And just like that. Unprotected private key. Interesting. It's saying here we need to give it permissions. So let's do that first. Okay, but we need to move it first. So let's get that out of there. Why isn't this letting me? Okay. And from here we can use the SSH permissions, and then we can SSH into it. Awesome. So now we're inside. So first things first, I would check what groups I have, right? If we want to do a, looks like I'm part of sudo, LXD, padmin, samba share, and admin. Lots of good stuff there. LXD, you can use the container elevation. Sudo, if I have certain programs, I can use SUID bits, GUID bits to elevate privileges on different programs. Specifically for this machine, since I've also already done it, we will do sudo-l. And it looks like this was the wrong way to do that, so gotta learn, right? So let's find some permissions. With SUID or sudo, that have sudo permissions. So here's a lot of information. Specifically, the one we want to look at is this menu one. So let's look at the menu. And I'm going to want to see if I can actually try to look inside of it. Okay, we can't do that. Maybe I can cat it. Okay, I obviously can't really read that. So let's create a screen. Create a screen again. And let's try to see if we can do the string command to try to pick out strings from inside of the program. Strings. So now looking through the strings, we can see if anything is useful. Here we have a few commands that are being sent out. And you can use these commands by typing 1, 2, or 3. And all these commands are being ran as sudo. And it's good to notice that none of these have specific file paths. It's just a curl name. So basically what you can do is create your own file. Say I make a file that's called curl. Right? So let's do that. Let's go to temp. And let's echo bin bash into a file called curl. And then let us do, what are we doing here? We want to export this to our path variable. So let's do path is equal to curl and path. Now I want to see what's inside of path. And there it is, I can see curl now. So now let's try to run the program. And let's type in number 1. Okay, that wasn't it. Type in number 2. Type in number 3. Okay, so it looks like it was one of those two. For purposes of this video, I'm just gonna see what I had done earlier. So we got this far. Okay, we had to give it privileges, and we had to put the temporary directory in the path name. Okay, that's easy enough. So let's give it all the privileges that we can, plus 777. And then let us export our path variable one more time. And now we should be able to run the command. And it looks like it's 1. Interesting, it didn't work. Right, you know why it didn't work? Because what I put inside of the file was bin bash, not bin sh. So let us echo bin sh and then replace it with what's inside. Then let's just cat it just to see that we actually did that correctly. So now we have 2 things in there. Okay, well, that didn't really help. So now let's do this. Let's do the same echo, but with 1 arrow. Then cat it again. There we go. Now let's run the program one more time. User bin, and then menu. And there we go. It ran the program with sudo privileges. Now your root, go to cd-root, and there's your root text file. And also, if you wanted to see the Kenobi text file, you can find that under his directory. There it is. Whew. Okay, this one was fairly easy because it had a lot of instructions, but the biggest point for this whole thing was to learn about Enum4Linux, right? I wasn't supposed to go through all this, but I did. And definitely, if it's useful to read through all this information. I already did it, so I was faster at doing it. And you're not always gonna have these menus, so it's good to remember these steps, remember what things you can do, and then be able to change those things for every specific idea. But yeah, that's about it for today. I hope you learned how to use SmbClient, Enum4Linux, how to connect to an FTP server without an FTP program with Netcat, and escalating privileges by modifying a program that already has sudo privileges. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it with that, and I will be getting another video out really quickly, probably like tomorrow. And thank you for being here. Let me know if this is good or if I need to be upping something up. You know, I'm open to any critical feedback. Definitely would like to improve on this if it helps anybody. So I will see everybody later. Peace.